The film begins in a secret warehouse, where a man named Damien meets with a gang boss to negotiate the sale of legal products. The boss notices Damien's concern and draws him aside, stating that he has heard there is a snitch in the group. When Damien tries to act innocent, the boss admits he knows Damien is an undercover cop. Cornered, Damien grabs his gun and defends himself against the attacking goons, using both shooting and martial arts. After subduing a bunch of attackers, Damien steps back, unsuspecting of an approaching car, and gets hit hard. Despite his injuries, he remains conscious and chases the boss in an attempt to capture him, only to realize that the gang has uncovered his true name, as well as his wife's identity. Terrified, Damien rushes home, but he arrives too late. When he reaches his house, his wife has already died. Years later, we encounter another man named Shimon, a college lecturer. Shimon begins another lesson at the local school and discovers that a student has been absent for the second time in a row. The other students explain that the boy has become addicted to drugs, and Amelia, a former addict herself, attempted to rehabilitate him but was unsuccessful. Just then, Shimon's son receives a call from the missing boy's mother, notifying him that the student has been discovered dead. This tragedy is not unusual at the institution, which has a serious problem with illegal drugs being sold on its grounds. Determined to avoid losing more pupils to addiction, Shimon turns to his best buddy, Damien, for assistance. Damien, who has been struggling with drinking since his wife's death and was discharged from the police force, allows the phone to go to voicemail. As night falls, he decides to gather himself and pay a visit to Shimon. Shimon discusses the school's problems while Camille listens from the corridor, but Damien refuses to assist, stating that he can't even help himself. Later, Damien goes to the store to buy more alcohol and is confronted by three thugs attempting to steal his money. He gently asks for it back, but when they disregard him, he quickly defeats them using items from the store. Another customer, irritated by the disturbance, hands Damien a bottle of alcohol to hasten his exit. Meanwhile, Shimon visits a warehouse at an address he heard from a student. Upon his arrival, he is caught red-handed. Damien awakens the next morning to tragic news on TV. Shimon has been found dead in the warehouse. Based on the evidence at the scene, investigators believe Shimon was responsible for the drug operation and committed suicide out of sorrow over his student's death. Damien realizes his friend is being framed, so he heads to Shimon's house to investigate. Disregarding all the media on the street, he secures admission thanks to a few remaining pals on the force and consoles Shimon's wife, assuring her that she is right to believe her husband was framed. When a detective mocks Camille for having a criminal father, Camille attacks him, and Damien intervenes to prevent his arrest, explaining that Camille is only a shocked teenager. Determined to clear his best friend's name, Damien visits a shady associate to obtain fraudulent documents. Then he goes to the school and pretends to be a teacher attending an interview to fill Shimon's post. The secretary cautions him not to apply because the school is too dangerous. But Principal Lake interrupts their chat and hires Damien because he is the sole applicant. Lake assures him that he will be safe thanks to a newly hired security team and introduces his deputy, Agatha, who will show Damien around when he starts work the next day. The next day, Damien arrives at the school and observes Haro, a student, collecting flowers from the deceased student's monument. Damien tries to get him to return them, but Haro summons his gang member, Mammoth, to beat him up. Mammoth, on the other hand, remains a shy boy under social pressure, moving very slowly. Before the situation worsens, Security Chief Shilsky arrives with his troops and directs the teenagers to the principal's office. Shilsky wants to confront Damien as well, but Agatha steps in, explaining that Damien is the new teacher. Agatha then shows Damien around and introduces him to their co-workers, including Stefan the chemistry teacher, before introducing him to meet his classmates. Kil has not returned to school yet because he needs time to grieve. The class is very raucous, but Damien quickly puts them in their place by seizing a student's phone and refusing to fall for their taunting. However, one kid is not as obedient. Frogface continues to annoy a classmate while rejecting Damien's warnings, forcing Damien to send him out. Frogface refuses to leave, so Agatha dispatches Shilsky to accompany him away. On his way out, Frogface threatens to see Agatha later. At the end of the day, Agatha is in the parking lot when she is abruptly confronted by Frogface and his gang, who have stolen her car keys and are now confronting her with the goal of exacting revenge. Damien discovers nearby that his tires have been slashed, and another teacher offers to drive him home. As soon as they enter the parking lot, they notice Agatha is in danger, and Damien rushes to her aid, effortlessly defeating all of the thugs despite the fact that one of them is armed. Damien sustains a hand wound, but it is insufficient to deter him, and Frogface flees in terror. Agatha brings Damien back inside the school to bandage his hand and inquire about his background. To avoid answering questions, Damien instructs her how to protect herself in case a criminal holds her. Meanwhile, the thugs take Frogface to visit Haro, one of several people who sell illegal products at school, on the orders of a mystery man riding a bike. When the guy approaches and removes his helmet, he reveals himself to be Haro, whose security company serves as an excuse to keep his troops on campus. Haro and Shilsky are both happy since Frogface owes them money and could have gotten jailed for attempting to retaliate against Agatha, implying that a beating is necessary. Haro urges Mammoth to do it so he can finally overcome his timidity and actually become a member of the gang, which he is just joining because he wants to belong somewhere. The next morning, Damien comes to school to see his car being towed. Everyone in the teacher's room is viewing the security camera footage and congratulating Damien on his success. Lake says he's paying for the towing and new tires as a thank you. Shilsky is skeptical of Damien's claim to be a superb fighter, but Damien maintains that he is only an instructor. Damien then rushes to the classroom, only to learn that the security footage has leaked and is now being watched by all of the students. They're ecstatic to have him as a teacher and keep bombarding him with questions, including requests for self-defense advice. Damien finds the concept hilarious and leads the class to the gym, making a deal: if they beat him, there will be no final exam. Obviously, they don't land a single hit, but they have fun during the encounter. Damien observes C arriving to watch, only to leave when he realizes who the teacher is. Damien follows C to the changing room, explaining that he is there to discover clues and prove Simon's innocence. But Camille jumps on him, outraged that Damien did not help his father when he needed him the most. To Camille's amazement, Damien agrees and admits that he feels responsible for Simon's death. It may be too late to save him, but I want to save the students, he says, and convinces C to keep the secret. At the end of the day, Damien's car is back in perfect working order, and Agatha invites him out for a drink. They enjoy a great time together in a bar, but things get tense when Damien observes some goons throwing slurs at two girls in the bar. Damien comes to their defense, and when the men refuse to back down, another fight breaks out. Damien jokes around with the goons instead of beating them up, which makes Agatha happy. After that, Agatha invites Damien to her home, where they arrive passionately. When Agatha goes to the kitchen to get some wine, Damien is hit by a surge of recollections of his wife, including the happy times and the disturbing ending. Damien decides he can't do it now and leaves without saying anything, leaving Agatha to draw the worst assumptions. On his way home, Damien notices Mammoth selling the items and takes the opportunity to chastise him, telling him that he has a brain and is not a member of a gang. Damien also tries to gain some information, but Mammoth tells him he can't say anything before rushing away. Later at school, Amelia notices one of her classmates purchasing items and attempts to warn her about it, because she knows how horrible it can be. Jaro promptly interrupts the talk and dispatches his goons to apprehend Amelia, forcing C to arrive to save her. Unfortunately, he does not know how to fight, so the gang members rapidly beat him up. Then, Jaro uses him as an example of what will happen to everyone who attempts to intervene in the future. When Damien arrives at the school, Agatha greets him with cold professionalism rather than the camaraderie of the previous night. Damien witnesses Camille's wounded face in class, but Camille claims he accidentally tripped, and no one dares to reveal Jaro. Damien chastises them for failing to advocate for themselves, but the students remind him that they lack the necessary skills. Determined to help, Damien invites the group to his old dojo after class. The facility requires extensive modifications, which almost makes the students want to leave, but Camille offers his assistance, urging everyone to stay. With everyone's aid, the dojo is cleaned in a matter of days, and Damien goes above and beyond to teach them his greatest skills. Thrilled with how rapidly they learn. At school he continues to teach history and attempts to connect with Agatha, but she still treats him as a co-worker and refuses to hang out. In his spare time, Damien follows several gang members to see where they keep their products and has the opportunity to tip off the authorities, resulting in the confiscation of the unlawful goods. Damien is happy with his achievement, unknowing that Shilsky is also keeping a watch on him. Jaro and the other members of the gang determine they must deal with Damien at the next gathering. Later, after a training session, Damien remains in the dojo to practice alone when he is abruptly attacked by a gang of masked men with sticks. Despite their abilities, Damien defeats them, albeit beaten and bleeding. The next day at school, Damien discovers Shilsky's security squad with terrible injuries and realizes they're linked to the gang. After class, Jaro and the gang pay a visit to Amelia's father on the pretense of repairing a watch they stole from Simon the night he was slain. Amelia steps in, and Jaro threatens her, leaving her shaken. The next day, Damien arrives at school and finds everyone in a bad mood. Amelia accuses him of taking advantage of her, prompting his dismissal. As Damien is let out, C confronts him, feeling deceived. Damien understands that his words will not be believed. Meanwhile, Amelia slips back into addiction. Damien pays her a visit after learning of the threat against her father. Feeling bad, he takes the stuff from her but is ejected by her father. Damien then persuades Frogface to speak, discovering that the stuff is manufactured in the school's laboratories. He hurries to Agatha with a clue, but she refuses to listen. Determined to find out the truth, Damien snatches her school keys before she can contact the police. He arrives inside the school and discovers that security personnel are still patrolling, forcing him to maneuver carefully, hiding in closets when required. Once the guards are out of sight, he sneaks into the chemistry lab and discovers proof of illegal item production. Damien is about to gather more evidence when he hears footsteps and hides just in time to see Stefan arrive, identifying himself as the head of production. Fortunately, Stefan swiftly departs to assist the security team, allowing Damien to take a few incriminating photos before following the van to the warehouse, where he is attacked by the security crew. However, he quickly subdues them by turning their taser against them. Damien then leaves a comprehensive message for Agatha detailing the issue. The next day, he shows the images to Agatha and Lake, who disregard them due to their poor quality, preventing Damien from involving the police. When Stefan and Shilsky offer alibis, Damien is restrained before confronting them. Despite being dismissed, Agatha stays suspicious and tracks down Amelia, who confesses to everything. Later, Damien receives access to the school's security footage, which he discovers has been altered to remove incriminating information. Feeling overwhelmed, Damien turns to booze until Agatha arrives and apologizes for doubting him. Damien ultimately opens up to Agatha about his background, and she comforts him with a kiss before agreeing to help. Together, they confront Stefan for information, but he keeps silent, revealing that he cooks for the gang to protect his wife. Suddenly, Shilsky appears and fatally shoots Stefan before riding away. The next day at school, Agatha looks into Stefan's locker while Lake meets with Amelia, who reveals Damien's innocence. Inside Stefan's locker, Agatha discovers a concealed journal outlining the unlawful activity and keeps it for herself. Camille and the students apologize to Damien after discovering the truth from Amelia. However, their reunion is cut short when they learn of Amelia's attack, now in a coma at the hospital. Agatha shows Damien the notebook, which contains a map to the warehouse. Damien visits the warehouse in the evening, ignorant of Shilsky's surveillance. They find the merchandise with Agatha's help but are pursued by Shilsky, Jaro, and the gang. Surprisingly, Lake reveals himself as the mastermind, dissatisfied with the younger generation's lack of academic commitment. A brawl ensues, with Damien's students stepping in and defeating the group. Damien approaches Shilsky and electrocutes him during the struggle to put an end to it. They then save Agatha from Lake, who tries to shoot them but is stopped by Camille, trapping him beneath a pile of toys. Damien retrieves Simon's watch and hands it to Camille as a memory of his father. Shortly after, the authorities arrive to apprehend all the students involved in the drug syndicate. The rest of the students are offered treatment, bringing the movie to the end. Thanks for watching. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe for more of these recaps. Until next time, have a nice day.